The sun barely touched the Lego skyline, yet inside the sprawling apartment, a different kind of heat consumed her. Adiz sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, her fingers trembling over the swell of her belly, heart pounding like the city's relentless pulse outside the windows. Sweat clung to her silk nightwear, pressing uncomfortably against skin already tight with shame and fear. Every sound from the streets below, the honking of cars, the shouting of hawkers, the distant beat of Afrobeat spilling from a nearby club, felt magnified in her chest. She closed her eyes, willing herself to breathe, to think, to survive. But the weight of the secret pressed harder than the Lego's heat. She was pregnant, and the child was not her husband's. A soft groan escaped her lips as she leaned back, the luxurious room suddenly feeling like a gilded cage. This was not just a moment of fear. It was a lifetime compressed into a heartbeat. Outside, the city thrived, unaware of the private storm unfolding in this apartment, as if daring her to break under the pressure. If you are searching for a story that will grip your heart, challenge your emotions, and immerse you in the lives of real people in Lagos, subscribe to the channel now. Hit the notification bell, and comment below where you are watching from. Follow Adiz's journey until the very last second, because this story is raw, real, and unforgettable. Adiz's life had once been simple, beautiful even, in its ordinary way. She met Chaik when they were young and ambitious, hearts full of dreams bigger than the modest streets they walked in Lagos. They married in a small ceremony, pockets nearly empty, hearts full, believing that love could carry them through anything. In the early days, Adiz was the backbone of their fragile stability. She cooked, cleaned, and soothed Chaik's anxieties about their uncertain future. When money ran short, she smiled anyway. When life tested them, she carried the weight silently, hoping it would be enough to protect the life they were building together. But ambition is a merciless force. Chaik, brilliant but often distracted, landed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a prestigious position in a top Lagos firm. A chance to escape the city's grinding struggle and secure a life many could only dream of. The problem? One small misstep, one missing financial guarantee, could cost him the job, and with it, their shared dream. It was during this time that Adiz's boss began to notice her. Not in professional ways, but in a manner that made her skin crawl. Powerful, wealthy, and predatory, he wielded charm as a weapon. A lingering look, a touch that brushed boundaries, small things that tested the edges of morality. Adiz initially ignored them, reasoning that this was just business, Lagos business, survival business. When desperation peaked and Chaik's career teetered on the edge of collapse, Adiz made a choice that would haunt her forever. She walked into the penthouse office of her boss, hands shaking, heart in her throat, fully aware of the cost. Words were unnecessary. Survival demanded action, and love demanded sacrifice. The room smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne, a subtle scent of power that intimidated and suffocated at once. The city lights stretched below, glittering like stars, yet all of it felt hollow, distant, irrelevant. Adiz closed her eyes and surrendered herself to the impossible, to the act that would secure Chaik's career but steal a part of her soul. When the night ended in silence, when her boss returned to his empire of wealth and influence, Adiz dressed, left the office, and returned to Chaik with a fragile smile. She carried within her a secret that already burned, one that would shape every breath, every decision, every thought for months to come. Now, months later, the consequences of that night had become undeniable. Every kick of her unborn child reminded her of what she had done. Every glance at Chaik, full of innocent trust, felt like a betrayal. The apartment, once a sanctuary, had become a stage for her torment. Lagos throbbed outside, teeming with life, while she remained trapped in fear and secrecy. Even the boss, the architect of this nightmare, loomed in her thoughts, a shadow she could not escape. Yet, in the midst of fear, a stubborn thread of hope persisted. The life inside her was innocent, a reminder that even in desperation, something pure could survive. Love is rarely perfect. Adiz knew this now more than ever. She had loved Chaik with every fiber of her being, carried his dreams as if they were her own, and sacrificed her dignity to secure a future for them. Yet love had also brought her here, to a place of shame, of guilt, of unbearable complexity. She remembered the quiet mornings when she used to wake beside Chaik, the softness of his face in the sunlight, the warmth of his laughter. Now, every smile was heavy, every touch tinged with the weight of her secret. And the betrayal, though not his, was inescapable, imprinted into the very fabric of her days. Lagos is a city of contrasts, glittering skyscrapers and hidden alleys, wealth and poverty, ambition and despair. Adi's life mirrored this dichotomy. On the surface, she was the perfect wife in a perfect home, moving through a world of polished appearances and whispered expectations. Beneath it all, a storm raged, invisible to everyone but her. The city carried on. Cars honked. Street hawkers shouted. The pulse of Lagos, relentless and unforgiving, seemed to mock the private chaos within her. She could not speak of it, could not explain the agony of loving one man while carrying another's child. Pregnancy brought its own challenges, aches, exhaustion, moments of vulnerability that made her question every choice. She moved through her apartment like a ghost, touching her belly, feeling life inside her and the life she had almost destroyed outside. She longed for connection but feared the exposure of her secret. Each movement, each glance in the mirror, was a confrontation with reality. Even the simplest tasks, cooking, cleaning, smiling at Chaik, were fraught with internal tension. She felt trapped between duty and desire, morality and survival, love and betrayal. Every day was a delicate performance, a test of strength and resilience that threatened to crumble at any moment. Adi's mind often returned to the moment of the sacrifice, replaying it like a film she could never erase. She remembered the power in his eyes, the way he had controlled the situation, the quiet knowledge that she was alone in this decision. She remembered the fear, the shame, and the strange detachment that allowed her to survive the act itself. She also remembered Chaik's trust, his oblivious joy, the way he had kissed her forehead, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her skin. That memory now carried pain as sharp as a knife, pain she could neither voice nor escape. Her apartment, once a haven, now reflected her inner chaos. The polished floors, the carefully curated furniture, the art on the walls, all seemed to mock her with their perfection. Nothing could mask the emptiness that stretched behind her eyes, the unspoken tension that hung in the air. The city outside, bright and alive, felt like a world apart, as if Lagos itself had rejected her secret, leaving her to navigate this private hell alone. And yet, despite it all, she waited. She waited for a sign, a resolution, a way to reconcile the life growing inside her with the life she had promised to protect. She waited for Chaik to sense the truth, for fate to intervene, for some miracle to render her sacrifice meaningful. But in Lagos, miracles are rare. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, turning the city into a canvas of orange and gold, Adiz understood the cruel reality. Her journey had only begun. The secret she carried would demand more than she could imagine, testing the limits of love, morality, and survival. Adiz's world is suspended in uncertainty. She is both savior and prisoner of her own choice, a woman caught between desire and duty, between shame and love. The city of Lagos continues its relentless rhythm, unaware of the private storm inside one luxurious apartment. And as the night falls, her story, the story of sacrifice, betrayal, and the hope for redemption, has only just begun. The night had settled over Lagos, and the city lights blinked like a million eyes, indifferent and watchful. Adiz lay on her side in the king-sized bed, her hand pressed to her stomach, feeling the soft, undeniable pulse of life she could not claim openly. The apartment was silent, yet she felt a presence everywhere, the echo of her choice, the shadow of her boss, the invisible weight of Chaik's trust. Outside, the hum of Lagos never ceased, the motorbikes weaving through traffic, the occasional shout of street vendors, the soft music escaping from open windows. Inside, she was suspended in time, trapped between her past decision and the unknown future. Every night, she repeated the same ritual, tracing her belly, whispering words to a child she could not yet introduce to the world, asking for forgiveness she could not give herself. The pregnancy had progressed, the contours of life now undeniable, yet every movement, every kick, reminded her of a truth she could not share. Days blurred into one another. Adiz moved through her routines with the precision of a trained performer. She cooked meals that Chaik praised, she laughed at jokes she barely found funny, she maintained the facade of the perfect wife, the loving companion. But beneath the surface, a storm raged. Her boss had begun to reach out more frequently. Subtle messages, late-night calls, meetings disguised as professional discussions, each one a reminder of the debt she had incurred with her own body. She avoided these encounters when possible, but in Lagos, power moves silently. One wrong glance or refusal could undo everything she had worked to protect. At the same time, Chaik's career had begun to flourish. The firm had taken him in, his reputation growing by the week, his dreams finally within reach. Every success, however, sharpened Adiz's guilt. She saw him thriving, oblivious to the price she had paid. And she could not tell him, could not risk shattering the life they had built together. Her mind wandered back to that night, replaying it in fragments. The office had been immaculate, the city glittering below through floor-to-ceiling windows. The scent of polished wood, cologne, and power lingered in her memory, as vivid as if it had just happened. She remembered the tension in her body, the quiver in her hands, and the strange detachment that had allowed her to survive the act. It had been quiet, professional, and yet intimately invasive. She had felt herself unravel, her dignity suspended in a fragile thread, yet she had endured it all for Chaik, for their future. And now, with each passing day, she realized that survival was only the beginning. The emotional toll, the internal fracture of trust, was only beginning to take root. Pregnancy had changed her body, her mind, her very sense of self. She observed every new curve, every subtle change in weight or skin, and felt a mixture of awe and despair. The child growing within her was innocent, untouched by the choices that had brought it into being, yet every kick reminded her of the secret she carried. She could not eat in peace, could not sleep in peace, could not breathe in peace. Every sound, every word from Chaik, every notification on her phone, became a test of her composure. She feared exposure, feared shame, feared the destruction of the life they had built together. And yet, even in the midst of despair, a flicker of hope remained. The child she carried was life itself, a chance for redemption, a fragile promise that even in darkness, something pure could survive. Lagos moved without pause. Streets teeming with cars, buses, and people reminded her that life continued outside her fragile bubble. The city was both ally and antagonist. Its vibrancy contrasted sharply with the heaviness of her secret, yet its relentless rhythm also mirrored her own internal turbulence. In moments of reflection, she saw the city as a metaphor for her own life, glittering, alive, full of ambition and danger, and yet layered with hidden struggles, silent compromises, and impossible choices. She understood that, like Lagos, she had to continue moving, to navigate the complexities of life without allowing her burdens to consume her entirely. Despite her careful composure, cracks appeared. One afternoon, she stood at the window, looking down at the Lagos streets below. The city was alive with chaos and energy, and she realized how small she felt, trapped in a life that demanded perfection while punishing her for a single choice. Tears rolled down her cheeks, hot and unrelenting. She clutched her belly, whispered apologies to the child she carried, and imagined telling Chaik, though she knew she could never do so without shattering both their lives. The emotional strain became almost physical, a pain she could not describe, a tension that left her breathless. Her boss's presence, though unseen, lingered constantly. Subtle messages, hints, and reminders of his control kept her alert, her body tense, her mind racing. Lagos had taught her many lessons about survival, but this was different. This was personal. This was intimacy weaponized. She could not escape it, could not confront it, could not reconcile it. The power dynamic weighed on her, a constant shadow over her pregnancy, her marriage, and her own sense of self. And yet, she continued to endure, hoping that endurance itself could protect the life she loved more than anything. Days stretched into weeks. Adiz's life became a labyrinth of emotional survival. She experienced joy when Chike succeeded, fear when she was alone with the memory of her sacrifice, longing for forgiveness she could not ask for, and shame for desires she could not express. Every glance, every touch, every heartbeat reminded her that she was trapped in a delicate balance. To survive, to protect, to love, to endure. And yet, the cracks in her composure deepened, threatening to expose the delicate lie she had built. One evening, as the sun dipped behind Lego skyscrapers, Adiz felt the child kick with a force she had not felt before. It was a reminder of life, of innocence, of consequences. And she knew, with terrifying clarity, that the moment of revelation was approaching, whether she wanted it or not. She would soon face choices that no woman should ever have to make. Choices that would test love, loyalty, and the boundaries of human endurance. And as night fell over Lagos, she realized that the city she thought would protect her was merely a backdrop to a storm that had only just begun. Adiz's journey was far from over. The weight of secrets, the burden of love, and the shadow of betrayal would continue to shape every heartbeat, every breath, every decision. And the true test of morality, desire, and survival was still waiting. Adiz stands at the precipice of revelation. Her child grows within her, innocent and unknowing, while the consequences of her choices loom ever closer. Lagos moves relentlessly below, indifferent to the private storms within her apartment. The city and her life are intertwined, each pulse of the streets echoing the tension in her chest. The apartment was silent except for the occasional hum of the air conditioning, a faint reminder that luxury could never erase fear. Adiz rested against the soft silk sheets, tracing the curve of her belly, feeling life stirring within her. Every movement of the child was a reminder of her sacrifice and the weight she had accepted in silence. Outside, Lagos glimmered in the evening light, its skyline jagged and proud. The city thrummed with energy, alive with the music of possibility, but inside, Adiz felt trapped in a life she had constructed with invisible walls. She had mastered appearances, perfected her routines, yet each breath carried a tension no luxury could erase. Her reflection in the mirrored wardrobe caught her attention. The changes were undeniable. Her body carried the evidence of her choice, each contour a reminder of the private storm she bore. She traced her stomach again, feeling a strange mixture of awe, shame, and love. This life, innocent and untouched, was a symbol of both hope and betrayal. Chike had been celebrating small victories at work, and Adiz found herself both proud and anxious. Each achievement deepened her guilt, reminding her that his happiness rested, in part, on a foundation she had built in secret. She smiled at his triumphs, hid the tension in her chest, and whispered silent apologies to the child she carried. They dined together, laughter masking unease. Chike's fingers brushed hers at the table, and Adiz's stomach tightened, not from desire, but from fear. Every touch, every moment of intimacy, was tinged with a secret she could never confess. The thought of losing the life she had fought to preserve was unbearable. Yet, she could not claim her own needs or desires without risking everything she held dear. The calls and messages from her boss increased. Each one was subtle, yet unmistakable, a reminder that the debt she carried was not only physical but emotional. Meetings disguised as professional discussions became tests of her composure, arenas where her private sacrifice could be leveraged at any moment. One evening he invited her to review a project in his office. Adiz's heart raced at the thought. The city lights stretched below, vast and glittering, as if judging her silently. She arrived, calm on the surface, but every nerve in her body was alert. The office smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne, familiar and suffocating all at once. He did not speak of her body, nor of the past night that defined her present, yet his presence was enough. Adiz felt the tension coiling within her, the thin line between survival and exposure stretching to its limit. Every glance was a test, every silence a reminder of the power he wielded over her life and future. At home, the pregnancy became harder to hide. Clothes that once fit comfortably now revealed curves she could not mask. Adiz moved carefully, avoiding situations where Chike might notice the changes too early. Every mirror, Every reflection was a confrontation with reality. Her child was growing, but so was the risk of discovery. Her emotions were a constant storm. Pride at the life she was nurturing, fear of the truth being discovered, guilt for what she had sacrificed, all tangled together in a suffocating web. Nights were the hardest. She lay awake, listening to the city, feeling her own heart race in sync with the unseen pulse of Lagos. Each kick, each flutter of the unborn child, reminded her that life continued, even when morality, love, and desire conflicted within her. Adiz remembered her early days with Chaik, the quiet mornings in their modest Lekki apartment, their shared dreams, and the laughter that once filled their home. Now, those memories were both solace and torment. They reminded her of what she loved, and of what she had jeopardized. She thought of her boss, and the stark contrast between the life she had known and the one she had been forced into. Lagos had demanded survival, and survival had required a price she could neither undo nor fully accept. Each day was a delicate performance, each gesture a negotiation between appearance and truth. The city seemed to watch her. The streets, the traffic, the constant pulse of energy outside her windows, they all mirrored the turbulence in her heart. Lagos thrived, indifferent, unstoppable. The city's vibrancy and chaos reflected her own internal conflict, a reminder that life moved forward even when personal storms raged with devastating intensity. Even the luxury of her surroundings could not contain her anxiety. The apartment, the skyline, the polished floors, all were symbols of appearances maintained under pressure. Yet beneath it all, she felt the vulnerability of a life built on secrets, a future poised on the edge of revelation. One afternoon, Adiz received a message from her boss, a late-night meeting, framed as urgent. Her stomach twisted. The child inside her kicked sharply, a reminder that every choice had consequences. She could not delay, could not refuse. Lagos waited, indifferent, as she prepared herself for the encounter, every nerve tense, every breath shallow. Arriving at the office, she felt the familiar tension. The city lights stretched below, vast and glittering, yet utterly irrelevant. This room, this man, and the secret she carried were now her reality. Every moment, every glance, reminded her that she was both captive and survivor in a world she could not fully control. The weeks progressed, and Adiz's body and mind became battlegrounds. Pregnancy brought new aches, exhaustion, and vulnerability. Nights were sleepless, spent wrestling with fear, shame, and longing. Days were performances, smiles and gestures masking internal chaos. Her love for Chaik intensified the strain. Each moment of happiness with him was shadowed by guilt, each success by anxiety. She could not confess. She could not risk shattering the life she had fought to protect. And yet, every heartbeat, every movement of the child, reminded her that she had already changed everything irreversibly. One evening, as the sun dipped behind Lagos' jagged skyline, Adiz felt a sharp kick unlike any before. It was almost accusatory, a reminder of the life she could not claim openly. She realized, with a cold certainty, that the secret could no longer remain hidden forever. Her boss's increasing presence, Chaik's oblivious happiness, and the undeniable reality of her pregnancy converged into a tension that was impossible to ignore. Something had to give. And in the quiet of her apartment, as the city below pulsed with life, Adiz understood that her carefully maintained world was on the brink of collapse. The revelation was coming. The choices she had made to protect love, ambition, and survival would demand a reckoning. And when the truth finally emerged, nothing would remain the same. Adiz's secret grows heavier each day. The child inside her, the marriage she loves, and the man who controls her past collide in a tension-filled dance. Lagos watches silently, indifferent to the private storm unfolding in one apartment. The city of Lagos glittered beneath the night sky, skyscrapers ablaze with light and life, indifferent to the private storm that raged inside one luxurious apartment. Adiz sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling over her growing belly. Every heartbeat of the child inside her echoed in her chest like a drum of inevitability. She could no longer postpone what had been coming for months. The truth, raw and unavoidable, was about to surface. Her eyes roamed the room, resting on every familiar object that now felt alien: the polished floors, the art on the walls, the photographs of her and Chaik smiling, unaware of the secret that had already begun to fracture their lives. Each item whispered reminders of what was at stake, of the life she had fought to preserve, and of the betrayal she carried within her. It began subtly: a misplaced phone, a lingering message, the shadow of her boss appearing in ways that could not be ignored. The intricate web she had woven for months was unraveling. Lagos, with its endless energy, its chaotic streets and towering buildings, seemed to mock her, as if daring her to face the consequences of her choices. Chaik, oblivious to the storm inside their home, continued to thrive in his career. Each success he achieved deepened Adi's sphere. Every congratulatory message, every friendly laugh, every kiss shared in the apartment became a dagger twisting in her heart. She knew the moment of reckoning was inevitable. And then it came, the message that would shatter her careful balance. Her boss, powerful and merciless, demanded a final meeting. The tone was unmistakable: compliance or exposure. Adiz felt the weight of inevitability press down upon her. Lagos throbbed outside, alive, indifferent, unstoppable, as if reflecting the relentless pressure she now faced. In the office that had once symbolized her sacrifice, Adiz arrived with a calm mask over a storm of emotions. The city lights stretched below, vast and glittering, indifferent to the confrontation about to unfold. Her boss's presence was suffocating, a reminder of the past that could no longer be contained. He did not speak at first. The silence was heavy, laden with unspoken demands and threats. Adiz's chest tightened, the life inside her stirring as if aware of the tension. She had no choice but to endure, to maintain composure, to survive. Every glance, every subtle motion, was a test of her strength, a measure of her endurance. And then, slowly, he reminded her of what she owed: power, control, manipulation, all balanced precariously on her ability to navigate this moment. Adiz felt herself teetering on the edge. Survival required cunning. Love required sacrifice. Morality demanded courage. When she returned to the apartment, the weight of secrecy pressed harder than ever. Chaik's laughter greeted her at the door, and for a moment, she wanted to melt into the comfort of their shared life. Yet every step, every glance, every moment reminded her that the truth could no longer be hidden. She moved through the apartment with precision, her body carrying the undeniable evidence of her pregnancy. She could no longer pretend that everything was as it had been. The secret she had protected for months was now a living, breathing reality that demanded acknowledgement. Adiz chose the night for revelation. The apartment, bathed in soft light, became a stage for confession. She placed her hands on her belly, drew in a steadying breath, and let the truth spill in the silence of the room. Chaik's eyes widened in disbelief, then confusion, and finally, a sharp pain that mirrored the emotional wound she herself had carried for months. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Chaik's trust, once effortless, had been fractured. The life they had built together seemed precarious, suspended on the fragile thread of truth. Yet within the turmoil, Adiz's honesty opened a door, painful, yes, but also the first step toward understanding, toward redemption. With the truth revealed at home, the power her boss held over her began to dissolve. She realized that endurance, honesty, and moral courage were stronger than manipulation and coercion. Lagos, in all its vibrancy and chaos, witnessed the end of this chapter, the fall of a man who had thrived on control. The meetings ceased. The messages stopped. Adiz reclaimed her autonomy, her dignity intact, though forever changed by the experience. The child she carried became a symbol of survival, of love that endured impossible trials. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of repair. Chaik, hurt and bewildered, gradually came to understand the magnitude of Adiz's sacrifice. The marriage, once fragile under pressure, began to heal, tempered by truth, trust, and a profound recognition of the lengths to which love could stretch. They laughed again, cautiously at first, then more freely. Small gestures, the brush of a hand, a shared meal, the quiet acknowledgement of presence, became bridges over the chasm that had once threatened to destroy them. The apartment, once a stage for secrecy, became a sanctuary of healing. The pregnancy progressed, each day a reminder of the innocence and hope that survived even the darkest choices. Adiz felt love for her child that was unwavering, a force that transcended fear and guilt. Chaik, witnessing her courage and the undeniable bond she shared with the unborn child, began to understand the complexity of her sacrifice. The child became a living testament to endurance, love, and the resilience of the human heart. In the quiet moments, the future seemed less daunting, illuminated by the possibility of forgiveness, growth, and unbroken bonds. The city outside mirrored the arc of their journey. Lagos, relentless and vibrant, continued to pulse with life, indifferent yet somehow reflective of the human stories it held within its streets. The chaos, energy, and beauty of the city became intertwined with Adiz's path, a reminder that life moves forward, carrying both pain and hope. Every honk, every footstep, every distant rhythm of music echoed the heartbeat of resilience, the possibility of healing, and the courage to face truths long buried. In the apartment, Adiz and Chaik stood together, facing the horizon through their expansive windows. The city stretched below, a testament to challenges, chaos, and possibility. They held hands, not perfectly, not without the scars of the past, but with a commitment to endure, to love, and to rebuild. The secret that had once threatened to destroy everything had instead become a catalyst for growth, understanding, and unbreakable bonds. The child within her, the love they shared, and the lessons they had learned converged into a fragile yet powerful new beginning. Adiz learned that survival was more than endurance. It was moral courage, honesty, and the ability to face consequences with dignity. Chaik learned the depth of love, the price of trust, and the resilience of the human heart. And Lagos, ever present, ever indifferent, bore witness to their trials, their triumphs, and the quiet miracle of reconciliation. The apartment, once a stage for secrecy, became a sanctuary for a family reborn. And while scars remained, both visible and invisible, the bond between Adiz, Chaik, and their child grew stronger, a testament to the endurance of love against the most impossible odds.